Hello, Brazil. Let's see. Maylee, come back, please. He will figure it out once he sees that we're actually live.
No, he's not checking.
He gets a message on his phone when we go live.
If that would see.
Okay, we are live. 1, 2, 3, stop. Okay, tonight we are going to talk about these scriptures in John 7, verses 14 through 17. So let's read those scriptures. So now, about the midst of the feast, Jesus went up into the temple and taught. And the Jews marveled, saying, "How knoweth this man letters, having never learned?" Jesus answered them and said, "My doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me. If any man will do his will, he shall know of the doctrine, whether it be of God, or whether I speak of myself." Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about, as I live the truths taught by Jesus Christ, I will know that they are true. So the Jews marveled that Jesus knew so much. Oh, I should switch this so that people can see what we're seeing. That was right. Okay, the Jews marveled that Jesus knew so much since he was not learned. At least not in the ways they were familiar with, right? Man, please come sit down. So, like...
But no. Apparently,
Okay.
back then, reading was an exclusive privilege.
It was an exclusive privilege. Most people wouldn't know how to read, and those who did would have gone to school, right?
Gone to a very special school.
So, even back then, people could read?
Yeah. So not
People have been able to read and write for a long time, but it used to be that was a really special privilege. There weren't very many people who had the time to
read.
who had the time to learn to read and write, or who would even have had the supplies, that even if they could read or write, paper was really valuable and hard to come by. And so they wouldn't have places to write things down.
Nowadays, paper is super easy to come by.
Yeah.
And recyclable.
And most
Like
Why?
recyclable.
why what?
Paper back then was so hard to...
Because they had to make it from scratch, right? They couldn't just they didn't have machines that would make the paper for them. They'd have to they'd do lots of different things to make paper.
Yeah.
We should do that sometime. Should we make paper?
Yeah. Sure, we could recycle paper. We actually have a
Well,
book
there's
about
ways that you can even make it out of grass.
Grass paper?
Well, what is paper made out of?
Really thin sheets of the tree bark.
Trees.
Yeah, so just
It's not so much that they don't cut the wood super thin, but
Can I
they
get some paper?
mash it up
Yeah, mash it up.
and then.
What?
Yeah, I think
Because we're doing scripture
one
today,
of the earliest forms was made out of paper was made out of reeds. Floppy somehow, and I don't know how it got floppy.
That happens. Okay,
How did
So-
you make it floppy?
should we get back on topic?
Yeah.
Since paper wasn't really our topic.
It was never our topic.
So he wasn't learned, he hadn't gone to school, but it says, at least not in the ways they were familiar with, right? Kind of. I mean, you guys could kind of have the same thing said about you,
Oh.
right? It's not like you guys go to school like most kids, and so people will be like, "Oh, well,
You don't know any.
you guys must not know anything." Is that not?
I
Is that
do
true?
know stuff.
I do.
So not true.
Because you guys learn a lot of things at home. Yes.
It's
Yeah.
if they said we don't go to school, we don't do it at school, then I wouldn't know what 1 + 1 would be.
You wouldn't know how to read. You wouldn't know how to write letters.
Yeah.
Right?
Like
All those
the
things.
ABC.
Like the
So-
ABCs.
I remember the story. It's where where they did. I think it's about when Jesus
Sam.
was a little.
No, this is when he was much older. So Jesus was teaching the people. He was went up into the temple and taught. But this was when he was much older. But he hadn't like gone to school to be a teacher. He had, done the things that they thought, well, that's what you need to do to become a teacher. But he'd never been to their traditional school. He still learned a lot of things.
I remember this story.
Yeah, so in Jesus' response, he taught a different way of knowing truth that is available to everyone, regardless of their education or background. According to John, chapter 7, verses 14 through 17, how can you come to know that the doctrine Jesus taught is true? Should we switch back to the scriptures? So you're going to find out how you can come to know that the doctrine that Jesus taught is true, other than going to school and learning about it.
One of them kind of say two, but I'm confused.
Okay, I would look at verse 17. You might want to look at verse 17 since you're going to read it best. See if that would help you know how you could know that the doctrine Jesus teaches is true, even if you haven't gone to school to learn about it.
If any man will do his will, he shall know of the doctrine, whether it be of God or whether I speak of myself.
So what can you do to know that the doctrine that Jesus taught is true?
Do his will, it says.
Yeah, you can put it to the test, right?
Yeah, put it.
If you want to know if...
That baseball is fun.
Okay, well, I was going to think of a gospel principle.
But that works.
Then you go
Well, Uncle Cody would highly agree with baseball being fun and gaining a testimony.
I think that was
Then
pretty
you
gospel-y. You're talking
what
about
would
gospel
you do?
baseball.
But
Gospel
what would you
Cody
do
is
to
all
learn
of it.
that? You would try baseball.
You'd have to try it out.
Yeah, like you need to try new things, or else how will you know you like them?
You gotta try new food because it might... Oh, not that.
Yeah,
Or-
not
or
just
like-
food.
Like anything.
So what about with the gospel? What would be a thing that you could do with the gospel that would...
If you didn't know about the gospel, tell somebody
What about-
they know.
like going to church?
I do that.
People might think going to church is not important. I'll
It
just
is.
not go to church. Will
Hey,
you gain a testimony of going to church by not going to church?
I will go to church because that's the important thing to do.
Will you learn whether it's important to go to church if you just be like, I'm not gonna go?
Hey,
Will
no.
that teach you if it's important?
No.
Now,
It's
what if you go to
important.
church? What kinds of things might happen at church that would help you know?
Well, church, like,
You
Good
take the
principles.
bread,
if you
you
don't
take
believe
the
in
bread,
the gospel,
you take
Uh-huh.
the water.
then I got
Well, it doesn't make you believe, but it teaches you,
Yeah.
right?
So, like, you could believe them.
You would have an opportunity to take the sacrament.
Not do it. It's you.
That's okay.
I figured you'd get the notification when you're in.
Yeah,
when you're ready.
I got to a stopping point, so I can't.
Or what other things could happen that are good at church? You might hear a talk that sounded like it was for you, right?
Like,
Or
I'm not tickling you. It's okay.
you did.
I did. I'm not doing it now.
so that would be one. Can you guys think of any other ways that you could do? What about the doctrines of treating people kindly?
Yes.
Do you think you can learn whether or not that's a true principle by treating people mean?
No.
What about the word of wisdom? Do you think you'll gain a testimony of the word of wisdom by breaking the word of wisdom? Not usually. Sometimes people realize oh,
That was really
that was a
bad.
really dumb thing to do,
I
right?
don't smoke.
Now you have lung cancer. Oh, I should have kept the word of wisdom.
Like you saw somebody
let's
smoking
burn this.
one time.
Mhm.
Now you
Well,
don't
it's burns this
Okay,
piece
so
of paper.
Yeah. Okay.
That has I don't know what they put in cigarettes.
Yep. Okay. So how has the process of trying parts of the gospel to gain a testimony helped you develop your testimony of the gospel? can tell you one way that it's helped me. So when I was in high school, we were asked a lot to do missionary work. That was kind of scary, Siobhan.
Oh,
Because
like we want to do like got the church and we practice being listening.
kind of like that, but like I would go to school and I was supposed to talk to my friends at school about the church. Most of my friends at school didn't really know about the church because I didn't live in Utah. I lived where there weren't very many people who were members of the church.
And
And
you
this
live
is in
in
high
California.
And I was always a little bit worried, like, what if they don't like me talking to them about the church or different things? But you know what I found?
What?
The more I talked about the church, and I would tell them things that I believed, as I would tell them then the things, it would make me think of things that had happened before, right? And then I would it was a lot of how I gained my testimony was by sharing with people the things that I did know, right? I might not have known all of the things about the gospel, but I'd learn a little bit, and then I would share it, and then I would learn even more. And I really believe that the more that you keep the commandments, it really becomes really obvious, like, oh, I want to keep the commandments, because my life is so much happier for keeping the commandments. You can see how you know, other people might have chosen other paths, and you go, oh, they didn't end up in such a good place. I'm really glad that I chose to go down the path of the gospel and ended up where I wanted to be.
Mhm. For example, let's say you were keeping the word of wisdom and then you saw somebody smoking a cigarette. Well, then they'd get lung disease and you'd think, wow, I'm grateful that I do not smoke.
Okay, Danny, that's her comment.
So, when you told those people about the church, did they go to church?
I brought some of them to some activities. None of the people who I talked to directly have ended up joining the church so far, but I was able to teach them things that I know. And sometimes I think missionary work isn't necessarily about getting people to like, oh, they need to join the church. Like, you hope they do because being members of the church makes us happy. And you want other people to feel that same happiness and to have that purpose in their lives that we do. But sometimes you just help them just by being a good person. You can be a good example to them. So like one thing, when I was younger, I was friends with just a girl, one of my neighborhood friends. And then we moved to all the way across the country, right? And I didn't see her very often.
And you're living in
We
California.
were living in California. But once we went back to New York, and I got to spend the day with her again. It would be like if we were to move and you didn't see the Harmers anymore. And then like in 5 years, we went back and you got to hang out with the Harmers. Would you be pretty excited?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this was my neighborhood friend. She lived like 3 houses away from me, and we would hang out after school all the time. And we were just hanging out, and she was like, man, you should come back because when you're around me, it's a lot easier to keep my language clean. I don't swear as much as I usually do because I know that you don't like that. And so she didn't join the church, right? That's okay. But I think I still had a good influence on her, even if it was just that small thing. And I think that's really what missionary work is trying to help people be better and to have better lives in any way that you can help them.
So, you talked about the word of wisdom, and I think we're hyper focusing on that a little much.
It's an easy one.
It's an easy one to think about, but there's lots of different things that we can try. That's part of the gospel. You know, one of the things that I tried.
It's just an easy one.
Yeah, one of the things that I tried that wasn't as obvious to me was fasting. It took me a long time to realize, like, understand, like, wow, why is fasting all that important? You know, it's like, it doesn't seem to make that much of a difference. Like, it just makes me hungry.
What is the point of fasting?
What is the point of fasting? That's really good, yeah. Well, and you know, doing it, I did it for a good number of years, but it wasn't until I was about 16 or 17 that I really started to appreciate how fasting helped me, when I was able to understand that when I fasted, I was going without food and water to help me remember remember a few things or think about a few things. One of the things that would come to my mind when I would fast was that I am a weak person, right? Like if I go without food and water for 3 days, I die, you know?
I don't think that's
And
the water.
Yeah,
with the water, the food maybe not, but definitely the water, right? And so then as I thought about that, I was like, okay, you know, if I can't go 3 days, you know, if I have a hard time going a full day without eating or drinking, why do I think like it's okay for me to go a full day without reading my scriptures or praying or doing something that helps feed me spiritually or think about things that are important, right? And it also made me think about how important it was that I needed to rely on God to help me in my life, because, you know, you take a few things out of my life, you take water out, I die. But you know, with God, He can do all sorts of things to help me, and He doesn't have the same kind of limitations that I do. And then it also helped me think more importantly about like other people in my life or other people around the world who didn't have food or water, easy access to it, and how it's important that, you know, I can sacrifice a little bit so I can come closer to God, but how it's important that I sacrifice and donate and try and help those people who are around me who can't always eat every day or every meal. You know, there's people all around us, even in Utah, that don't know where their next meal is coming from.
That's why you guys put together those backpacks.
Those backpacks, right?
No, we have to put them together very carefully. Hands on the bottom, ramen on top.
Yeah. So see, I started to learn all these different things, and there's still more things that I'm learning in it, and it helped me feel the Spirit more strongly even when I was fasting, because I was doing something for the Lord and looking for blessings, looking for help and answers. And those are just some of the things that I was learning from fasting, from trying that part of the gospel. So,
yeah.
There's all sorts of different things we can learn when we try the gospel. And the thing is, it's true with scriptures, it's true with every part of the gospel. The more you try it, the more things you can learn from it. There isn't just one lesson to be learned from the word of wisdom, right?
There's thousands.
Yeah. So like you talked about the most obvious blessings, right? Don't smoke, you don't get lung cancer. Great. That's an awesome reason. But there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
And when you try it more, you'll start to learn more and appreciate more all of the different lessons you can learn.
That when you're free of addictions, that you're able to think more clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Like a backpack.
And yet you can feel more empowered and in control of yourself, your body. You can, but that's the thing. You have to keep trying it and testing it so you can learn. And that's something I've realized about the gospel, is that the more you, like, God doesn't ever give us a commandment or ask us to do something for just one purpose. It's usually to bless as many people as possible and in as many ways as possible. So the more we try it and the more we do it, the more ways we'll discover how we can be blessed and how we can bless others.
Okay.
So let it be written.
So
let
it
be
done.
There we
See,
go.
Cody knows what to do. He must be an Anderson.
Yep.
See, I told you that was like an Anderson thing.
No, I
No, just an art thing.
What are you doing?
That's
Do
you.
you?
Do I do the thumb?
Do you know why?
Why do you do it?
No, I don't know.
That's totally not what I did.
The movie?
Oh, but like, why do we do it at the end of scriptures?
Stop.
That's why.
Is there a reason? I don't think there
No,
is.
there's not a reason.
We just
do
started
it.
in a movie and we started doing it.
I'm sure Dad started doing it one night, and now we
Now
do it.
we do it forever.
Yep,
Everyone does.
That's fine. Now you know, Sam.
Maybe one day we'll put ties around our heads.